What's going on, you guys? It's Shiraz Ahmed coming at you with some more financial and business content. For today's video, I wanted to go over 6 really important or my top tips for any either newbie or veteran investor that you can use and apply today. So stay tuned. All right, welcome everybody. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Shiraz Ahmed. I am an associate portfolio manager and financial advisor with sartorialwealth of Raymond James, located in Toronto, Canada. And in today's video, I wanted to go over 6 really important tips that any investor, whether you're a veteran or a newbie, you can apply today and use in your portfolio. As I always say, if you do appreciate the content that I'm creating, please do smash that like and subscribe button, as it does help the algorithm pick up creators like me. And of course, I'm uploading new content every single week. So if you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified the next time that I upload a new piece of content. So let's jump in. The first really important tip that I wanted to give anybody was a great piece of advice that my mentor gave me many years ago, nearly 2 decades ago. And it is really simply put, be careful of shiny objects. And this is kind of my catch-all phrase way of saying you want to be careful about the latest and greatest fad. And it never fails that, as time goes on, there's a new one every single time. But these fads can be anything, ranging from cryptocurrencies to, at one point in time here in Canada, the cannabis sector was really under a lot of heat. And, this goes all the way back to, in the 15th century in the Netherlands with the tulip craze, where at one point in time, tulips were actually worth more than a house. And I refer to all of these things as shiny objects because that's really all that they are. They're the latest and greatest and newest thing. They're a fad. And like any other fad, you have to be careful because they quickly have their time in the sun and then immediately following after their time in the shade. So most novice investors and even veterans, frankly, get kind of sucked into this whole thing that, it's a no-brainer. You're guaranteed to make money. Well, those are quick ways in which you want to be really careful with placing your money. So as professionals, we're always very cautious about, it's not about what I think, it's what can I prove? So that's point number 1. Number 2, and this is probably why the first one is so prevalent, patience, or frankly, lack thereof these days. We live in this instant gratification world, in the world of McDonald's and Starbucks, where you can have whatever you want literally at your fingertips. Just-in-time inventory, Amazon.
Prime now. Give it to me now. When I press buy, put the item in my hand.
We've all been trained, unfortunately, to expect gratification immediately. And in the investing world, unfortunately, this leads people to be making what I would call the not greatest decisions more often than not. And so what I would generally advise most people to do is be mindful of the fact that good things typically don't necessarily come immediately. Sometimes you have to wait. So if you're a gardener, you understand the fact that if you put in a seed and you water it, eventually it will grow. Well, similarly, in the investing world, you have to be mindful where you give investments an opportunity to work. Some of the greatest investments are not sexy and they don't necessarily move very violently, slow and steady. So what we typically will advise people to do is in the whole analogy of the tortoise and the hare, well, in this case, you really probably more want to be the tortoise. And time is frankly your best friend. So the longer that you have from an investment horizon standpoint, the less risk or volatility you really need to take. So if you could just go out there and manage your patience, or flex your patient muscle, for lack of a better word, you'll be far better off in the future. Point number 3, and this one's a real doozy, is just because you saw it on TV or on YouTube or anywhere doesn't mean it's true. This is the reality. We live in a hyper-information world. It used to be 20, 30, even 40 years ago, there wasn't as much information that was out there. You're really relying on what the headline was on the front page on the newspaper, and or the business section if you're subscribing to it, or even at best, maybe your nightly news or your evening news. We're in a hyper-information age right now. I call it the era of WebMD. I mean, right now you could literally Google almost anything you can think of and get more articles and journals and white papers than, frankly, you could even try to digest. So you have to really be careful about sifting through information that just because it's out there doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Now, no, I'm not talking about fake news because that actually does exist, but the reality is, what is the incentive behind any media publication, right? It's to get their word out there and get that word across, and frankly, to sell papers or media or whatever you want, analogy you want. But that's really what they're ultimately trying to do, is they're trying to push their media. So there's the mainstream media, there's the alternative media, everybody has an agenda. And what I find, at least has worked well for me as a professional, is read all the above. And then frankly, what is true is typically what's common between them all, because everybody's got their own angle and spin. So you have to be really careful about digesting what the talking heads on TV, including myself and everybody else out there, what we're all saying. Number 4, and this is a common one, don't fall in love with your investments. So as professional advisors and all professionals in the industry, typically, we will look at all investments as tools in a toolbox or widgets, whatever analogy serves you best. But we do this on purpose so that we don't fall or use our emotions in our decision-making process. So typically we would advise people to just be very careful about, getting too ingrained into any investment or looking at it from an emotional standpoint, just because you need to stay dispassionate and take a step away so that you can make an objective decision. Unfortunately, when you get too close to it, sometimes you can't be objective, and that's frankly a problem. So what we do as professionals is, because we're doing it on someone else's behalf, we're able to take that step back and say, you know what? It doesn't matter to me either way. We want to make sure that we're making the right decision. So as an individual investor for your own portfolio, wherever possible, try to take a step back and look at it and judge it dispassionately. That will really serve you well and take you a long way. Number 5, and this is kind of closely related to number 4, is be careful about managing your behavior. So funny enough, this is actually probably one of the biggest components as a behavioral investment advisor. It's one of the biggest parts about my job is coaching people and going through, frankly, and having tough conversations about scenarios that sometimes don't feel super natural or intuitive. Is taking that contrarian approach, or just because right now something is selling off dispassionately, it doesn't make sense, it doesn't necessarily mean that you jump ship. We are all humans and we're all emotional creatures and we're driven by our emotions. So we have to be careful about keeping them in check and not allowing them to make our decisions for us, as opposed to allowing our logic and our dispassionate side of us start to actually make more wise decisions on our long-term behalf. So you have to really be careful about really reeling in your emotional state and not letting it kind of get the better of you, frankly. Very rarely in all situations in your life, this will probably go a long way, except for maybe with your significant other. So you want to be careful. Don't take my advice there. Number 6, and I think this is a really important one to end on, be mindful of chasing performance. I can't tell you how often I have a couple or family come into my office and ask me about the latest and greatest of what they read in the paper the day before, or an advertisement they saw on TV or in the newspaper, etc. This is the challenge, is that past performance is not indicative of future performance. So frankly speaking, even just pure math probability side of things, what has just worked is actually, funny enough, less likely to continue to work. So a lot of the rhetoric that people have about checking past performance, how did it do previously? Well, it's a good idea to get it, a sense of trend, but outside of that, it doesn't really serve you any major information about what is going to happen going forward. So always be cautious about chasing what has just worked. Just because something had great performance, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to have great performance. So really be mindful of what is it that you're looking at. And if you're ever concerned about these things, that's why professionals exist. And so please feel free, reach out to people like myself or anyone else that you feel comfortable with about getting some, frankly, arm's length advice about what is it that's going on in my portfolio? What is it that's keeping me up at night? So these are kind of my top tips that anybody can actually go and apply today into your portfolio. I'd love to see and hear from you guys. Maybe drop me a line. I'll put my contact information at the end. How are you guys finding this emotional roller coaster of a world that we're in right now? And how are you How's your portfolio fared, frankly, through this? I'd love to hear your comments. So on that note, again, if you guys appreciate the content that I'm creating, please smash that like and subscribe button. So I'll be uploading another video again next week. If you hit that bell icon, you'll be notified next time I upload. So as always, please stay safe out there, you guys, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Take care.